It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network.
Where do we stand on Juju Smith-Schuster, DeAndre Hopkins, Saquon Barkley, and more? Plus, the FFPC Best Ball Tournament targets and fades you need to know in order to secure that $200,000 grand prize or perhaps the $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event or the Fantasy Pros Championship. That is all coming up tonight on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. I am Eric Balkman on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, beg your pardon. I am Eric Balkman from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course the Fantasy Football Players Championship. You are watching live on bettersports.com. And all the social media channels that go with Better Sports and the FFPC. So glad you're spending your Thursday with us, and we plan to make it worth your while with my special guest co-host this evening from the 33rd team. You follow him on Twitter at FF_Wheeler. It is Kev Wheeler. Kev, welcome in, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's exciting because I know you've drafted a lot of the Superflex and Never Too Early Best Ball teams with the FFPC, and I always like to bring on people who have not only knowledge like you do, but skin in the game too. And it's been, you've been drafting for a while now, right?
Yeah. FFPC, I've dabbled here and there. A lot of times it's when I'm doing a stream with the Goat District,
right.
or I did one last night too, just to kind of get into the FFPC mode. But I've been hitting Underdog like crazy just because it's so easy and convenient and fills quickly. But I start drafting usually. I think this year I might have held off until after the Super Bowl, but I'm thinking usually it's January and and I'm doing playoff fantasy football too. Like I tried to regulate myself a little bit this year, but I'm not so good at that.
Yeah, well, few of us are that strong. That's just the way it is. As a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, you can win a $1 million grand prize in the inaugural Fantasy Pros Championship. Just $350 entry over at myffpc.com. As a reminder, this is an urgent reminder. Register by tonight. So you basically have 8 hours. Midnight Pacific time is the cutoff. If you register by tonight and draft by June 30th, you're going to get a free $35 FFPC league credit. You do that up to 3 times, you'll get up to 3 credits as well. If you want to play fantasy football 365 days a year, you can do that with the Dynasty Leagues over at myffpc.com. They start at $100. They go all the way up to $5,000 for an entry fee. 1,300 plus Dynasty Leagues over the last near decade. None of them have ever folded. So go to myffpc.com if you want to make sure you're entering into a Dynasty League where you know the future of it. It's not going to fold. $100 million. Now that'd be a prize. A $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event is up for grabs. A $200,000 grand prize in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament and a $50,000 grand prize in the Superflex Best Ball Tournament. Just $35 to enter that. You can enter all 3 of those over at myffpc.com. And if you want to play in several, closed 12-team leagues where you're not competing against thousands of other teams in a nationwide contest, you just want to beat up on 11 other people, we encourage that kind of behavior too. Just go to myffpc.com, slow drafts, live drafts, sit and go, best ball options, all at myffpc.com. Producers Anthony Rivera tonight. Kev, let's get into it tonight. News, and I use news with quotation marks on this because I don't know how newsy this is, but Sean Payton, the new head coach of the Denver Broncos, was talking about Javonte Williams today, saying that he's optimistic about his recovery from that torn ACL last year. So this is good. I mean, it's not bad that he's saying this. Not a whole lot has been said as far as his time frame of when he expects to get back out on the field. And we also don't know his workload and how effective he's going to be once he does take the field. The Broncos have not really been in. I know a lot of people think they're in on the Dalvin Cook sweepstakes. It doesn't seem like they're close to signing him or maybe Leonard Fournette. They did go out and sign Samaje Perine. That was their big addition of the offseason. I guess the question here that we need to sort of unwrap is how healthy do we think Javonte Williams is? And if you're drafting in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament right now, and you're looking at Javonte Williams, he currently has an ADP of running back 30, Kev, at the 803. Is that a spot you want to be interested in him? And if so, when do you expect to see, I don't want to say league winning, but effective Javonte Williams play this season?
So at 803 is probably when I start looking at him, the 8th round. when has a new coach never ever been not optimistic about guys coming back from injury, really? And Sean Payton's one of those guys I got to kind of look back into. Does he tell the truth? Is he straightforward? We know Pete Carroll, pure lies. Don't ever listen to anything Pete Carroll says. But certain coaches will tell you exactly what's going on. I think this is just he hasn't heard any bad news, so we shouldn't react to any bad news. We should go about this as if he'll probably be slow getting back into the rhythm. Maybe we see him at 100% week 6, and in which case he ends up being a steal in the 8th round. In any tournament, especially. If you're playing in a best ball tournament, you have to keep an eye, especially after round 5 or 6. Your eye has to be on those playoffs. If you're drafting now, you know how to draft a solid team, but what's going to put you ahead of the others and get you in that real money is what's going to happen in the playoffs. And if Javonte is 100% by week 6, that's really all I can ask for, especially in the 8th round. And I think the signing of Samaje Perine says we might see him earlier than that. Might, if they went out and signed a big name, I think it would say maybe he's on the back burner. But signing Perine, Perine's a very good backup running back. I don't see him as a replacement for Javonte in any way, shape, or form. Could be wrong about that. I think he's a solid fill-in, and they're just waiting for Williams to get to be 100%, and maybe that's week 6. But I think in the 8th round, that's what you're looking for.
And that's a great point that you bring up, too, because if the Broncos all of a sudden signed Dalvin Cook, or they went out and signed Leonard Fournette, all of a sudden alarm bells will be going off in our minds about Javonte Williams. But right now, we have to kind of believe what the team is doing here. The team has not added anybody besides Perine, so that must mean they are actually positive about Williams' recovery from injury. Couple of questions, follow-up questions. That number one, if he does come back, so are you saying if he comes back in week 6, you imagine him getting a heavy workload right away and getting back to capital letters Javonte Williams, or is there a ramp-up period to that before we see that? And then number 2, when you are drafting in big national tournaments, like the FFPC Best Ball tournament or anything like that, how much of the playoff schedule is playing into your mind? How much of the end of the season is playing into your mind when you're on the clock and figuring out how the best way to construct your team?
It depends on what running backs I already have. So if I have 2 running backs by the 8th round, I'm probably not even looking at running back. If I have 1 running back, I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping it. Actually, Javonte fits in as a 3rd running back. And that's what I'm saying. In the 8th round is when I start looking at him. Most of the time by the 8th round, I have a 2nd running back. I'm getting 4 wide receivers in that first 7 rounds, might sneak in a quarterback, might sneak in a tight end. As a 2nd running back, it depends on who else is on the board, right? If I can, or can I stack Javonte and Samaje? This is what I was talking about a couple months ago, actually, where I think they were both going a little bit later. What is Perine's going in the 9th, right?
Right now in the FFPC Best Ball tournament, 906 as running back 32. So he is not that far behind Javonte Williams.
So I'm not a huge fan of handcuffing, but this is one of those that kind of fits in that Todd Burrows coined the stack cuff, where you're going to more ham and egg it. Right? Especially in a best ball, if you have both of them combined, you have most likely a top 10 running back. Yeah. And I don't see there are probably going to be a few games in the middle there where they kind of take away each other's upside, but I would see it more as a yin and yang, where one performs and the other takes a back seat. Kind of that shift, almost like I think it's what I was looking for Javante's rookie year when was Gordon there? There was another.
Yeah, it was Melvin Gordon. It was Melvin Gordon.
There was, yeah. All right. So I said Gordon will run the first 8 weeks and Javante will take over the second 8 weeks. And it wasn't quite mirrored like that, but it's pretty close. So stack cuffing there may not be a bad idea. Depends on the rest of your roster construction.
Do you expect Williams, like, let's say week 6, he makes his return. Is he getting 15 to 20 touches right away?
Probably not. I would think it'd be malpractice to give him 15 to touches right off the bat. The pup now, you don't have to take the full 6 weeks, right? So, like, even if he worst case scenario, ends up on the pup, that he sits out for 3 or 4 weeks, it takes 3 or 4 weeks for him to get back in the flow. So, at worst, he's full force by week 8.
And that'll get it done because you're just still looking at more than half the season and the most
Right.
important weeks of the season,
Right.
The money weeks, he should be there for it. The Better Boss actually chiming in too, and I just looked at this. This is something you could pull off pretty easily. He just drafted Javante Williams and Breece Hall with Christian McCaffrey as his first-round pick. So massive risk there, obviously with injuries. But you're talking about McCaffrey being a first-rounder. I mean, Breece Hall right now in the FFPC Best Ball tournament, you're looking at him in, like, was it the 3rd or the 4th? I got to look that up again here. It's not or running back 11 at the mid 3rd. And then obviously we just talked about Javante Williams in the 8th. So you could easily do that. And honestly, if you're trying to win a national tournament, probably not the worst idea in the world to have a couple of teams like that, right, Kev?
For sure. And then you could back end it with a couple running backs that'll fill in for the first couple weeks, or and Breece Hall's next, right? So word is he's doing sprints on the sidelines. He's another one though. Like, so it takes 3 or 4 weeks for him to get back into full flow. I'm fine with that. If he's at 15 to 20 touches by week 4, I'll take him in the 3rd round. I'm fine with that. And with the Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, they're probably going to be near the goal line a lot, and I don't see Aaron Rodgers sneaking any in.
No, he doesn't.
Now he might audible through a pass play. That's possible. But
got to pad those stats somehow.
It could end up passing to Breece too.
Right.
So.
And Hall's injury was different than Javante Williams. Williams was, at least in the stuff I've read and heard, it was more of a significant injury to some other damage around his ACL. Breece Hall's, I think, was clean. And I mean, the sprints, it's good. You'd rather have him be sprinting rather than not. But with ACLs, my big thing is, like, how shifty is he? How is he side to side? Like Booby Miles in Friday Night Lights, right? Guy could run up and down the sideline, but once he tried to cut on that injured ACL, it was lights out.
That's a reference.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Breece Hall right now, and I've talked to plenty of high stakes players. I'm sure you have too, Kev. Had Hall not torn his ACL last year, he might have been the 101 in drafts this year. That's how good he was looking last year. And obviously with the addition of Aaron Rodgers. At the 305, running back 11 behind Derrick Henry and Ramondre Stevenson, right ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs and Najee Harris. Your thoughts on him as a mid-3rd round pick? How have you been attacking him? Have you been getting him at that spot so far this year?
Yeah, if I start out with 2 wide receivers, Breece Hall is right at the top of the queue coming into the 3rd. If I knew he'd be healthy for week 1, I was still a little.
Well, he'd be going higher than the mid-3rd.
Right. He may go 101. Well, RB1 at least.
Yeah.
But I don't think we know that, even if he's healthy in spring and the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I still like if I'm running a team, if I'm the coach, I'm bringing him back slow. Like he's on a pitch count. Like, I want him for the end of the season because I got Aaron Rodgers for the playoffs, right? Like, so even if he's fully healthy, I would work him in slow. But that is actually what you want. Like, he's still going to get the high value touches. So yeah, if we know he's healthy, he's a 1st rounder. So, like, if he's sitting there in the 3rd, especially when I get 2 wide receivers to start, I'll take Hall all day.
Yeah, it almost makes you think that the uncertainty with Breece Hall has made him unfairly fall too far, right? Like,
Right.
because we're talking about the team here in June. They're still hoping that he's ready for week 1. This is not, oh, we'll see what happens. Oh, we're taking it day by day. Oh, we're liking how he's coming along. No, they still think by week 1. And the fact that we have that timeline, I think, maybe bumps him up, especially as the drafting season gets deeper and deeper here in July and August. Maybe we start seeing him go up the boards as well. To continue our running back conversation here, Ben Standig, who covers the Washington Commanders for The Athletic, had a report about Antonio Gibson today, I believe this morning. Ron Rivera called Antonio Gibson, quote, a matchup nightmare for the opponent. Now, it seems like Eric Bieniemy is really wanting to utilize Antonio Gibson's Liam Neeson-like special set of skills here out of the backfield, which is what we're always looking for as high-stakes players. We always want to make sure that we're getting these pass-catching running backs. J.D. McKissick has always been there for the course of Gibson's career. He's not there anymore, or at least he's not there right now. He's a free agent. So it could be Gibson's backfield as far as the pass-catching goes. And I got to believe if he's showing off in space, he's probably going to take some of the touches away on first and second down from Brian Robinson. And I look at where he's going right now. I mean, this is a player that I feel like when he was being compared to Christian McCaffrey a couple of years ago, then we saw the hype really get out of control. But now he's fallen to running back 37. You can get him at that 9-10 turn. He is going behind guys like Robinson, A.J. Dillon, P. Ryan, Zach Charbonnet. You can get him at the 9-12. Is this coach speak, Kev, or should we be taking this closer to gospel that Rivera's calling him a potential matchup nightmare, that we should be bumping him up and he shouldn't be a late 9th round pick anymore?
So earlier in the drafting season, he was actually going 11th, 12th round, like way behind Brian Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
They have kind of merged, and on certain platforms, Gibson has started to go ahead of Brian Robinson. All along, the fantasy community has been saying he's a matchup nightmare. This is, I don't think this is necessarily coach speak. I think he just finally woke up, and Bieniemy was like, "What are you doing? You're not using Christian McCaffrey. Like, he's not. Let's not call him Christian McCaffrey. Although he's got that skill set, he's got the size, he's got the speed. Like, It's in his range of outcomes. It's in the highest of his range of outcomes, but it is in the range of outcomes. And actually, I think he benefits from Brian Robinson eating up those just grinded out kind of plays. They can save Gibson for, I think they should use him more than just third downs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they're keeping him fresh, so be it. And I think Rivera was actually high on him last year. It's just that he fumbled like crazy, and that got him benched. And Rivera's old school, so like it's one thing he has to clean up. And I think Bieniemy's going to work with him on that, and I think getting him in space should help that. But I think it's more the way he carries the ball too. Like Rivera will, he's a hothead. He's an old school coach. He's a guy that's going to bench you for fumbling. It's the Tom Coughlin type, right? But at least Tom Coughlin could teach Tiki Barber to hold it the right way. If they can teach Gibson how to hold the ball the right way, the sky's the limit.
The Commanders' backfield, I think, is something that if you get it right this year, whether targeting it and having it work out or fading it and then having it be a disaster, that's going to be key to winning fantasy leagues. We always talk about these pockets of fantasy goodness, right? There's obvious pockets of fantasy goodness among the Minnesota wide receivers, Cincinnati wide receivers, San Francisco 49ers running backs, right? And then there's sort of the unknowns. Like, we don't know what to expect from it. And I think one of those unknowns is in Houston this year at wide receiver. You're looking at Robert Woods, who didn't look all that great last year. Nico Collins, who I feel like we've been talking up the last couple of years as a potential breakout, and Tank Dell, basically. Those are the three major guys for competition for one John Mechie, an Alabama receiver that was a second-round pick last year. He had a hamstring injury that he suffered early on in the offseason, and DeMeco Ryans, the new Texans head coach, says that he's on target for training camp. Mechie obviously dealt with it was leukemia, right? if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And that knocked him out for the whole season. But his talent is good. I mean, he's not the biggest guy in the world, 5'11", 190 roughly. But the fact that this offense is so wide open, and you know, people say all the time, well, Balky, yeah, it's so wide open, but the team sucks. Like, it's who's gonna be leading this team down the field? Rookie CJ Stroud. Who's he gonna be throwing to? Well, yes, that's true. But at the same time, if you look at historically, these teams still pass. They still move the ball. They still put up some numbers. Somebody has to catch the ball here. And I look at John Mechie in this offense. I mean, Mechie has just as good a shot as anybody to really make a case for, hey, I'm the Texans receiver to draft this year. He's going in the 17th round of the FFPC Best Ball tournament right now. Curious to know what your shares of him are like this year and your thoughts on the Texans wide receivers as it stands right now here in mid-June, Kev.
So in March and April, I was very high on him, and John Paulson was also high on him. If the people out there don't know who John Paulson is, reset everything. You need to know who he is. But the longer we get into this offseason, the more I'm thinking is like it's a feel-good story, and I really want to root for him. But he really, I feel like he was overdrafted in the first place, which, I mean, it doesn't matter at this point. It's still draft capital. He had, an 8.88 his final season in Alabama. You said he was small. His 40 time was slow, too. And if he already has a hammy, he's coming back from leukemia. And I feel like I said the same thing about, was it James Conner? We're going to see reoccurring injuries and I feel like I might have been wrong about James Conner because I feel like he came back and was bam. I'm a little hesitant, let's say, on Mechie at this point, but you're right. There's really nobody else. Nico Collins, I kind of like, but I think he's going in the 12th or 13th round. That seems a little expensive for somebody who hasn't ever done it before. And Robert Woods is old. Yeah, there's a possibility he can have a couple games here and there, and for an 18th round pick, I guess Robert Woods is just fine. And Mechie is a better pick in my opinion. I think he's got more potential to actually put up numbers, but I actually feel like the main target on that offense is going to be Schultz. You know, it's the old narrative of the rookie quarterback relies on his tight end, but in this case, I kind of think it's probably going to happen that way. And not that I'm very high on Schultz, but and I want the best for Mechie. I really want to see him do well. But if he gets any higher than the 17th round, I probably won't be drafting him, right?
Yeah. And I look at it right now, as far as the Texans pass catchers go, you're right. Schultz is the first one off the board. Well, technically, Dameon Pierce is the first one off the board in the 6th round. But then you're looking at Dalton Schultz at the 9-11. And then the first receiver drafted is Collins in the 13th. Mechie is in the 17th. Tank Dell and Robert Woods both in the 19th right now. And I think as it gets late in the game, to me, and you can probably speak to this better than I could, but if I get to late in the game in those national tournament drafts, and give me the Mechie, give me the Tank Dell. Robert Woods to me is he's swinging for a single, right? When you should be swinging for home runs at that point. And Mechie and maybe not necessarily Dell, because I think his skill set doesn't really represent the big home run type pick that you could get in the 19th round. But Mechie in the 17th, I like him there. And then Collins in the 13th, I think you're right. I think he's a little bit expensive. But Mechie right now is in that sweet spot. He gets any higher, we'll have to rethink it. You are right outside of Baltimore, correct?
Yes, I am.
And you are not a Ravens fanatic, as it were, right?
Not at all.
So this is good because we have somebody who's in the area, and I know you're not super connected to the team or anything, but you'll at least be able to talk from an unbiased standpoint, right? So,
which is rare in Baltimore, believe me.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah. So Zay Flowers gets signed. Zay Flowers gets signed, first round pick of the Ravens, and I think it's interesting because Rashad Bateman, and I saw Theo Greminger from Player Profiler tweeting about this, but Rashad Bateman got a
cortisone shot.
Thank you. I was going to say a Propecia injection. That's not what it is at all. That's something completely different. Yeah, cortisone shot. So you have Bateman, who, like, I don't know, he called out the GM this offseason. He was hurt last year. He has not yet lived up to his first round pedigree. And then we see Zay Flowers, and I don't know what your thoughts on Zay Flowers are, but I hear a lot of smart people talking him up, even as a rookie, that this guy could be a real difference maker. Your thoughts on Flowers versus Bateman in drafts this year?
I am starting to come around more and more on Flowers. I've been high on Bateman. I think Bateman's going to skyrocket. It was Lamar was talking up Bateman about a month ago. I listen to quarterbacks. I don't listen to coaches for the most part. So I've been drafting a lot of Bateman. Zay Flowers, like when he was cheap, I was drafting him more. Dan Williamson's high on him, and me, Theo, Dan, we're all in the same group chat because the GOAT District. But yeah, I've been much higher on Bateman. I might start to see that shift a little bit. But this cortisone shot was merely just a follow-up to getting the screws pulled out from his Liz Frank injury. So Harbaugh is saying that it's nothing. Even there's a Twitter doctor, Deepak Chona. He's saying that it's really nothing. It's likely he's 100%. What does he say? Most likely outcome, still playing week 1, ramping up to 100% by the end of October. So maybe it is Zay Flowers coming out. Zay Flowers was underutilized in college because he went to BC. So you're not going to see amazing college stats. And we generally don't like rookies that have played 4 years of college, but he played 4 years of college during this COVID era, right? So everything is confusing to begin with. So anybody that played 4 years and is coming out this year, I'm kind of giving a pass to. So I answer is I like them both, especially if you can grab them in the 8th, 9th round after stacking, and you're stacking him with Lamar. Lamar has jumped up lately. Since he signed that contract, right?
Yep.
He was going 5th, 6th round. Now I think he's jumped up to 3rd or 4th, depending on the draft.
3rd. Yeah.
That's a little bit expensive for me, but I overloaded on him when he was going in the 5th, 6th, and I was able to stack. So, and everybody's kind of bumped up too, except Beckham. Thankfully, he's. I didn't understand the 9th round Beckham when he first signed. It didn't make a bit of sense to me, but I guess follow the money guys were following him up, and I think that shifted. I think I see a Zay Flowers starting to move up, and he might be going before Bateman in some drafts now.
It's very close. It's very, very close.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the ADP on Fantasy Mojo for the FFPC Best Ball tournament. Zay Flowers has moved up to the 9-11 on average. Rashad Bateman is at the 8-12. So Bateman's been falling a little bit. Flowers, I remember the days. Well, I mean, this was, when Beckham was still a free agent, but Flowers is behind Beckham. And then Flowers obviously got drafted. Beckham is now a Raven. Beckham's fallen to the end of the 11th round as wide receiver 51. Flowers is wide receiver 47. Bateman's wide receiver 44. So if you like Bateman and Flowers, if you like them both this year, you're kind of out just completely on Beckham, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I don't think I have a single share, maybe one share. I mean, I've drafted hundreds of teams so far, so I'm sure there's a Beckham share laying around there somewhere.
Yeah.
But right now, I don't think I would even consider looking at him until maybe the 13th, and that's even if I have Lamar. Let's say I have Lamar and I couldn't get Zay or Bateman. Maybe that's when I start looking in the 11th or 12th. But I'm not reaching for him by any stretch, no matter what.
I also remember the days when the contract thing was going on. You kind of alluded to this. And Lamar Jackson was quarterback 7 in the 6th round. Now Jackson is all the way up to quarterback 4 at the end of the 3rd round. Now, technically in the FFPC, if you wanted to, and I don't necessarily know if I'd sign off on this, you could start out with but you could get an Andrews Jackson stack. Is that something that you would be interested in?
Yes, please.
Okay. So you would basically have to You would have to take Andrews, like probably the middle of the second round. And then when it came back to you in the third round, middle of third, you'd have to take Lamar Jackson. And you already think he's too pricey at the 311.
Yeah, I mean, they in
how many?
FFPC,
Okay.
So
let me frame it this way. Let me frame it this way, Kev. So we've been talking about a lot of Ravens pass catchers here. When's the last time we've talked about Ravens pass? Like it hasn't happened.
Right.
Now all of a sudden, there's Bateman, there's Andrews, there's Flowers, there's Beckham, there's Dobbins, for God's sake, on this team.
There's
and
a new offensive coordinator.
And Todd Monken. Yeah, we cannot underestimate that, because you basically went from like a Linehan type guy and Greg Roman to Kellen Moore guy and pass in Todd Monken. So
you went from the Roman Empire to the Renaissance.
Yes, we are full of analogies tonight. And
I'm a history teacher. So
there you go. Then that makes sense. All right. So now Lamar Jackson, you say the third round is getting a little too pricey, but I mean, I'm looking at it like, my God, this guy could be the league MVP again this year.
He could be, and as he should be in that group with those other three quarterbacks that are going in the third round. I think maybe my issue would be Mark Andrews. Like, Mark Andrews would have to fall, but then coming back in the third, you'd have to reach a little bit on Lamar. So like the prices are getting a little bit wonky. Like, if I can do it, if it falls in my lap, yeah, I'm all over it. But I don't see it happening, and I don't think I have a single one on any platform. Just because Mark Andrews is just going just a little bit. He's a little bit pricey for me. Like there's plenty of wide receivers and running backs that I'm taking over him. And it's probably a flaw in my game a little bit. And I think if I go into FFPC, I might be going for that Mark Andrews a little bit more often. But I think where I don't get that stack is because I'm just a little bit lower on Andrews. Not as far as position, I have Andrews as a tight end too, but I just have enough running backs and wide receivers that I haven't been getting Andrews.
Right. I get it. And then that makes perfect sense. We know where you stand on Jackson and Andrews. And we're also going to find out where you stand on players like Elijah Moore, Dalvin Cook. Right now, we're drafting blind with him, right? Because we don't know where he's going. Jahmyr Gibbs. That is all coming up. He is Kev Wheeler from the 33rd team, at Wheeler_FF. I am Eric Balkman from the FFPC. We're going to step out just for a little bit. When we come back, where does Kev Wheeler stand on those players, the players I mentioned, and much more? This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, only on the Better Sports Network.
The High Stakes Fantasy Football Show with Eric Balkman.
So let's get into some best ball philosophy here.
Yeah.
In your experience, going back many, many, many years, drafting in national tournaments, Bradley, have you historically been shying away from the running back position in favor of wide receivers? In favor of, if you're drafting in the FFPC tight end premium format, in favor of tight ends as well? Is that the smart play when you're drafting this early in the drafting season?
Yeah, so taking value is going to be huge, and looking at like running backs and wide receivers, like you want to take a look at how the structure is. So you mentioned earlier the FFPC has a couple different types, like they've got super flex and one quarterback, and so that's going to change your strategy a little bit if you have only two wide receivers or if you're drafting three wide receivers. And of course, the PPR is a different aspect compared to other formats or other tournaments. And so keeping in mind the pass catching upside of some of the running backs may be more valuable in those formats. So the Austin Ecklers, the Christian McCaffreys may be more value because they get more receptions, and so like I loved taking late shots a couple years ago on like the JD McKissicks of the world, who would get 50 receptions really cheaply. So that's something to consider. But when it comes to like overall value, like you're drafting, you're in the middle of a draft, and you just notice that, I don't know, maybe it's Chris Godwin has fallen 14 spots, but Chris Godwin was not in your plans to be drafting. Like maybe you don't have a strong player take on Chris Godwin, or we're not like, my take is that I don't think the Bucs are going to be particularly good this year. But for him to be dropping, let's say 14 spots is more than a full round. And based on the data that we've seen, if you get to draft a player more than 12 spots ahead or behind ADP, so they drop 12 or more spots, you have an 84% edge over the rest of the tournament players who are drafting this player, because typically this player isn't going to drop. The average draft position is a really strong indicator of where a player is going to go. And I think that is also on the flip side. If you are reaching too much, you're giving up value in your drafts. And so when it comes to value-based drafting, you need to consider, just because this guy is in my plans or I don't have a strong player take on him, maybe that's your opportunity to sprinkle in some shares of this player at a good price.
It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network.
Where do we stand on Juju Smith-Schuster, Dalvin Cook, and others? Well, we're going to tell you here. He's Kev Wheeler from the 33rd team. I am Eric Balkman from the FFPC, and you know where else you can go to find out where Fantasy Alarm stands on these players? The Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Football Draft Guide, the all-sports subscription. Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Football Draft Guide is now available. Purchase for $26.99 or get it free with a monthly or annual all-pro subscription to Fantasy Alarm. You can start your free 7-day trial. A lot of frees in here, people. Don't be looking a gift horse in the mouth here. Start your free 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm All-Pro and get immediate free access to the draft guide. Just go to fantasyalarm.com. That is fantasyalarm.com. Kev, as we, high stakes drafting starts earlier and earlier every single year. I feel like with the FFPC, we've started doing drafts for the following year while the NFL playoffs are still going on. And even though we have now moved, my goodness, we're 5 months past that, it's still early in the going for a lot of people out there. And we are drafting blind for a lot of these players, some of the players on this list, right? Can you kind of take me through your mind, sort of as a philosophical thing? How does your draft strategy change when you're building up these best ball teams in March and April and May and June? How do you have to sort of change your strategy and go a little bit different of a direction than you would be if this was late August or early September?
A lot of it is the rookies go later. So your late round dart throws are very rookie centric. I also found myself drafting a lot more running backs super early, basically because it felt like we only knew a limited amount about who was an actual starting running back. It felt like receivers were plentiful, and you could get quality receivers going in the double-digit rounds. That doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. Every single draft I do, I have 5 receivers by the 9th round. By the end of the 9th round, I have 5 receivers. And I can push running backs depending on the platform. FFPC running backs tend to go a little bit earlier because you only have the 2 starting wide receivers and then the 2 flex. Mm-hmm. So you have to platform adjust. But for the most part, I was able to hold off a little bit on receivers. And the rookie running backs I could get late. So I was kind of stacking a couple I knew starter running backs in the beginning, maybe getting one of those 0 RB types in that 8th round, 7th, 8th round, maybe 9th round, depending. And then grabbing a couple rookies late, maybe mixing in a veteran that hasn't signed yet. And you can still get Fournette and Hunt really late. I've been scooping up that Fournette really late. And I would appreciate it if more people would start picking him up so I could, lower my exposure.
Diversify a little bit.
But really, as the second he signs, it doesn't matter who he signs with, he's going to be bumped up to at least the 12th round. Even if he's on a split backfield, which is the most likely thing, he's worth a 12th round pick.
And that's what's so challenging and so much fun, right? Especially when it pays off. when he does sign, and then you get to enjoy the fantasy contributions he gives your team. But you have to sort of like take a stand on players like that if you are drafting now, which, hundreds of people are. And I look at a list of players here that I put together, and as far as where you stand on them, Juju Smith-Schuster is an interesting one because DeAndre Hopkins, who we're going to get to in a second, is currently on a 2-day visit to New England. And Mike Giardi from the NFL Network reported yesterday that Juju Smith-Schuster is still having to deal with this knee injury that he had last year. Giardi also said that the second half of the 2022 season, the Chiefs had to manage that knee. And the fact that now here we are in June and he's still dealing with it, this is not great. And this is a guy who has been banged up over the course of his career in the NFL as well. Now, you look at Smith-Schuster, we know the possibility of Hopkins signing there. We also have the possibility of Hopkins not signing there, right? And if Smith-Schuster goes into the season as the number one target for New England, certainly that's great if you get him at wide receiver 50 at the 10:06. But if Hopkins signs there and you already picked him in the 10th round, that's not going to be great for him. How do you handle a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster in drafts right now?
I think I was not fully aware of that knee still bothering him. That definitely adds in news. I've been fading Juju. He's priced right, but I guess at the time I'm not looking for receiver anymore. Maybe I think where he goes in the 10th, maybe. I'm looking at a quarterback there, or maybe looking to fill in my running backs. I've kind of just been passing him. I wouldn't necessarily say fading him, but I don't see the upside. Maybe that's what it is. I don't see the upside for Juju, but I guess I am contrarian in thinking that the signing of DeAndre Hopkins helps Juju.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Think about it. When Juju is a primary, he hasn't performed. When he's a secondary to Antonio Brown, he had massive years.
Mm-hmm.
So, does Hopkins take away the coverage that would be shifting over to Juju? And to me, Hopkins and Juju play basically different positions. Hopkins is a clear X, and Juju is a clear slot. Sure, Hopkins can shift into the slot and move all over the place, but maybe if they get Hopkins, they end up cutting Juju. But if they're on the field at the same time, I actually think it helps Juju. I'm actually more optimistic about Juju's upside with a guy like Hopkins on the outside trying coverage.
And then we have to be fans of Mac Jones, right?
Oh,
go ahead.
I kind of am.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. If when you're in these best ball drafts, you could literally Tyquan Thornton, Mac Jones, Pierre Strong, Hunter Henry in your last 4 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a New England stack who's playing against the Bills in week 17. And I understand week 17 correlation has some, detractors, but if you want to win the big money, being stacked in week 17 is going to benefit you. So if you drafted Josh Allen, go ahead and stack him with the Patriots in the last 4 rounds, and you could be in the money come week 17. But yeah, and they have Bill O'Brien, who isn't the best offensive coordinator, but he's certainly better than Matt Patricia.
Yes.
And
he has experience, obviously, in Alabama with Mac Jones too, right?
Oh yeah. Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally right.
See, you like Mac Jones, and you didn't even realize. So now I like him. See, I like him at his price.
Well,
here's Kev. This is what's so great tonight. You weren't aware about the knee injury to Smith-Schuster, but you were already fading him. So this is going to make him even more of a fade for you. And then the Bill O'Brien, Mac Jones angle. Now this just makes you like him even more. So basically, I'm just your own personal echo chamber tonight, man.
Hey, I appreciate that. and that's the reason why I come on these shows too. Just bouncing opinions off other people is great. I tend to listen to the same podcasts over and over because I just like the delivery.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to really bounce ideas off of others or get different perspectives is where this is all about. And new news, like sorry.
I will say this, Kev. One of the things that I struggled with, this is when I was a young, pig-headed, I know everything fantasy football guy. One of the things I struggle, and I've done the high stakes fantasy football hour for, this is like year 12 or whatever. So I've had hundreds of high stakes players come on, and some of them will have opinions that I will think, how is this person winning all this money? This is crazy to me that they're winning with this strategy. And then if I have a down year, or if I'm like, man, why didn't this team work out? I have to look at it and say, you know what? I can't say certain things are crazy anymore. I can't say that this is just not viable, because I have proof positive every week that these people are doing this. And I really opened up my mind. This is probably like, I don't know, 8-9 years ago or so. I just kind of was like, I need to open my mind up more to certain things. And I think it makes us better fantasy football players, as you alluded to. I mean, there is a lot of, the smartest man is the guy who says that there's much I don't know, right? And there is much we don't know, which is why we're always talking to people and trying to figure out the stuff that we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know more than we do know. Excuse me. Thanks for vamping there.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
But a perfect example is that Liam Murphy, who's won many best ball tournaments, to listen to him, I know, no offense to Liam, but like, he kind of comes off as this like joking around kind of, I'm here for your entertainment. He's won 3 massive tournaments. Like the guy knows what he's doing. So like, yeah, it's a perfect example is just listening to others and their reasoning. Yeah, especially the high stakes players. Like being on a high stakes fantasy show, I feel like I have a little bit of imposter syndrome because I'm clearly low stakes and a little bit of mid stakes, and I've done all right here and there, and actually,
but I mean, like with like Dan and Theo and JD and Shelly and all those guys. I mean, you're rubbing elbows with them all the time. So I mean, you basically, yeah, at least like you have the knowledge of a high stakes player, even if you're not playing, $10,000 buy-in leagues or whatever. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to build that bankroll to get there.
We all are. All are.
And yeah, like those 4 guys you mentioned, we're in 4 different dynasty leagues together. So, I'm always competing with them.
Right.
And it's iron strengthens iron.
Yes.
Is that the term? Is
Yep.
that right?
Iron sharpens iron.
That's it. I don't think that's actually true, but okay, I'll go.
we get what it means. Yeah,
right.
You could be right.
Right.
I'm
no chemist.
I'm not either. I want to get back to the New England situation with Hopkins. So this came out roughly an hour or so before we went on air, that the Patriots and DeAndre Hopkins ended their visit together today without a contract agreement, but they're still trying to push. According to Howe, who covers the Patriots for The Athletic, said that Hopkins left Gillette Stadium not before he took a photo with Patriots defensive end Matthew Judon and posted on Instagram. But the Patriots are putting on the full court press, essentially. Hopkins wants a lot of cash. I don't know if the Patriots be willing to throw him the big bag. I don't know anybody who is willing to throw him the big bag, but Hopkins is another guy, and maybe this is an easier guy to take a stand on here, Kev, because wherever he ends up, he should command a pretty big target share. And we saw last year, even with Colt McCoy throwing to him, he still was not only fantasy viable, he was an asset in your starting lineup down the stretch. Wide receiver 20 at the 409. Are we too high as an industry? Are we too high for high stakes players drafting him at the 409, or does that seem like a bargain for you at this point?
It seems right about the right price. I've seen him going a lot before Arizona cut him. I saw him going at the end of the 3rd, early in the 4th. If he's dropping to the late 4th, I've actually started drafting him. Like he's starting to get into that range where I'm overloaded on Amari Cooper. Early in the draft season, I kind of was heavy on Debo. So he's right in that range. So I've started to filter in more Hopkins. And he's going to get to choose where he plays, right? So like, yeah, he's chasing the bag, but he wants to win too. Like, he's a competitor. And if he's willing to go back to Bill O'Brien, there has to be something in it for him. Do the Patriots pay him? I think if they have the money and if they have the cap space, I think they do. They've done it before with Randy Moss. And Hopkins isn't Moss, but he's 90% Moss. And like, do I think he makes it through the whole season healthy? I mean, I wouldn't bet on it, but if he does, he's wide receiver 1 numbers.
Yeah.
Like, he's a true alpha in this league. Like, you don't find Hopkins very often.
To continue the Hopkins conversation, but in Cleveland here, let's talk about how it affects a guy like Elijah Moore. Hopkins could sign with his old buddy Deshaun Watson and be a Brown this year. And that would obviously, it might hurt more than anybody else, Elijah Moore in that offense. Zach Jackson covers the Cleveland Browns for The Athletic, and he said that Moore is an easy pick as an early breakout candidate based on the Browns spring work. Well, what did he do in spring? He was the most targeted player through the 5 open spring practices, caught just about everything thrown his way. This is all good, warm and fuzzy stuff we're hearing from a Browns beat writer about Elijah Moore. But the fact that Hopkins could still go there looms. And, oh, by the way, they still have Amari Cooper. They still have Donovan Peoples-Jones, and they still have David Njoku on that team as well. Now, as we look at the FFPC ADP for the best ball tournament, wide receiver 46 at the 9-11. This is a guy, if Hopkins signs there, he could fall. I don't see him going much higher than the 9-11. What are your shares looking like for Elijah Moore this year, Kev?
I am way overloaded on Elijah Moore. I do not want Hopkins to go to Cleveland. I'm overloaded on all the Cleveland players. I'm very optimistic about their season. And Elijah Moore is like, as soon as he got traded there, I was like, cool, give me.
Right.
And yeah, they're using him the way he should be used. The Jets never did. I was high on Elijah Moore last year, but like, it was one of those, like the Brandon Ayuk thing where he just didn't get along with his coach, and Elijah Moore never came around, and his coach never came around to put him in. Brandon Ayuk, you know, Shanahan came around and they saw a meeting spot, and I'm high on Ayuk again. But Elijah Moore just never got there with his coach, and getting out of town was the best thing for him. You know, I'm old enough to remember when the year 3 breakout was a thing, and I see that in Elijah Moore's future.
Elijah Moore is a guy that has left New York for Cleveland. A guy who may or may not be leaving New York for, I don't know about Cleveland, but maybe another place, is Saquon Barkley. Now, Kev, I don't know about you. I think I know where you stand on this. I don't like to get into the holdout type stuff, especially in June, because I think a lot of times we just gas bag into the microphone. We waste a lot of breath. And then these guys report, and then all of a sudden everything's hunky-dory, coup de la, and we're all good. Britt Flynn, our very own Britt Flynn for Fantasy Alarm, has a fantastic piece she just published a couple of days ago, fantasyalarm.com, of what it would be like if Saquon Barkley decided to hold out. She examines the Eric Gray angle. She examines the Matt Breida angle. And then if Barkley does indeed come back, what do you do with Breida? What do you do with Gray? So check that out at fantasyalarm.com. I'll reference it again here. But the reason we're talking about this is because earlier in the week, New York Daily News published quotes from Saquon Barkley about sitting out the entire season. Barkley said, quote, "That's a card I could play." Now, I have seen reports since then that Barkley and the Giants are talking. He says he wants a long-term deal rather than the $10+ million he would be receiving on the franchise tag this season. For reference, 1,600 plus total yards from scrimmage last year, got in the end zone 10 times, with the offense basically running through him for large chunks of the season. Now, Ralph Vacchiano, who covers the Giants for Fox Sports, says doesn't sound like a long-term deal is particularly close, but they're talking. He's going at the 201 right now. For me, I'm not scared of that. If I'm scared of the 201 price, it's not because of the potential holdout yet. Right now, I look at what this dude did last year. I understand he's going for another contract here. And that's when I get a little bit skittish about drafting a running back that high what have you been doing with Saquon Barkley this year?
I'm not a full fade, but a light fade on him. I do not like holdouts. I do not see them coming to an agreement anytime soon. I think this holdout extends up until the season. That you can't hold out anymore. You have to at least play 8 games. So after 8 games, does he pull a hammy? You know, like I don't like this, especially with running backs. Dan Williamson is big on, I won't touch an injured player. I won't touch a holdout. And I'm not fully on board with that all the time, but this is one of those cases where I think Barkley knows that running backs have a short career. He needs to get paid. I forget where I heard it and the exact wording of it, but I feel like he's taking on the responsibility for all running backs, that running backs need to get paid more. The salary, the franchise tag is not fair to running backs. And I feel like he's taking, like back when Le'Veon Bell held out, he was doing it to get that bag, but he was also doing it for the good of the position. I feel Barkley feels that responsibility to the rest of his peers. So I think he holds out until August at least. And I don't see him practicing in full for most of the summer. And I just don't like that. When you don't come in fully prepared as a running back, your risk of injury skyrockets. So in the second round, he would have to fall to the late second round for me to consider him. I'm not touching him in the early second round. I just like other guys better on top of it.
You know, the only other running back that's currently going next to him or close to him is Jonathan Taylor. He's basically one pick later. But then if you still wanted to wait on a running back in the second round, you get Nick Chubb, Tony Pollard, or Josh Jacobs. Those are the other second-round running backs, along with Derrick Henry, who we'll get into later on in the show. But Josh Jacobs is another guy that said he's sort of like bearing the cross, for lack of a better term, for running backs as he's looking for a long-term deal as well, especially after what he did last year. And remember to check out the article from Britt Flynn. If this holdout continues, and if it does hold out, the holdout continues into the season, she'll tell you what to do with Matt Breida, Eric Gray, and then if Barkley does come back, what to do with Breida and Eric Gray on more. And maybe who knows, maybe Dalvin Cook or Leonard Fournette go there. I don't know. There's a non-zero chance of anything, Kev.
Yeah, I think they would sign somebody that isn't a complete no name, but like not a headlining name.
Okay.
Just because, you know, they'll want a body in there.
Right.
To begin with.
All right. So Brandon Jacobs back to New York. We get it.
That's a big body.
Big body, little name, right? As it comes down to it. Yeah, you know, and this is why I don't like to get into the whole holdout discussion, because there's so much, you know, this standoff is going to last for a while. And now, you know, training camp is still like 5 weeks away, 6 weeks away, or whatever it is. So we got a ways to go on that one. I'm struggling to remember a running back like Jahmyr Gibbs, where he is. I mean, there's been so much positive, exciting stuff written about him from beat writers and obviously the coaches in the front office love him there. Colton Pouncey, the Athletic Lions reporter, said it's been a point of emphasis to move Jahmyr Gibbs all over the place during practices. He's in the backfield, then he's in the slot, then he's split out wide, or he'd be split out wide and then he'd come back to running back. Gibbs says he's been working on his route running a lot. And DeAndre Swift is no longer there. Swift, as a reminder, got 70 targets last year in that Detroit offense with Jamal Williams, and Swift was usually not healthy either. So the fact that Gibbs was drafted so high, he's got all this great draft capital. The Lions seem to love him. He's already running with the ones in Detroit. I mean, it's been a while since we have seen a running back that in the pre-draft process, Kev, I don't think anybody was super gaga over this guy, but that all changed when the Lions went and took him at the 12. And now Gibbs is the running back 12. in FFPC Best Ball Tournament ADP right now, 309. He has moved ahead of Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, and J.K. Dobbins. He is going at the 309 right now. Is that too high for Jahmyr Gibbs, or is the potential of the league-winning upside there too hard to resist?
So I think one of his biggest proponents is Sean Siegel from Rotoviz, and I would give him at least 50% of the credit for pushing Gibbs up. I disagree with him, though. I just to say you disagree with Sean is like, it kind of makes my story Swiss cheese. But like, I'll give him, Gibbs is 200 pounds. He weighed in at 199. He's 200. Let's put him over that threshold. But that's still 12 pounds less than Swift.
Yeah.
And like, okay, so these coaches like Gibbs, they're going to use Gibbs the way they should have used Swift. Maybe he's tougher than Swift. Go ahead. But at 12 pounds less, I don't care how tough you are. You're not going to be a between the tackles guy. And Montgomery is better than Jamal Williams, is he not?
I don't know. I go back and forth on that. Bear in mind that I do root for the Packers and I love Jamal Williams here, so maybe I'm not the greatest guy to be asking. I mean,
Jamal Williams was taken a round ahead of Aaron Jones, right? So like
one round ahead, yep.
Right. So there's reason to believe Jamal Williams has talent.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been high on David Montgomery. I've always faded David Montgomery, and it's been a detriment to me, right? But now he's going in the 8th round, 9th round, 8th round, 7th, 8th round.
Yeah, 706 right now.
I would rather take Montgomery at 706 than Gibbs at 309 or even 409. If Gibbs fell to the 5th round, yeah, give me. I'm going to start getting them. And I got plenty of Gibbs before the draft in the 7th round where you could scoop him up for value. Of course, that's it. And I still wasn't. I was mainly drafting him in that 7th round because if he gets drafted with decent capital, and I mean, decent capital would have been 2nd round. He was drafted at 112. Yeah, that's why he skyrocketed. But I still don't see them giving him he's not going to be a bell cow. He's not at 200 pounds. And David Montgomery is at least adequate. Like, they're going to use David Montgomery. I mean, at best, it's a split backfield. I do like Gibbs in the 5th, not where he's going.
And I think as far as league winning upside goes, yeah, that's great. But you also have to consider the potential pitfall of taking a guy like that in the 3rd round where maybe he doesn't live up to what you're hoping for. And then at that point, now you get your arm tied behind your back because you missed on your 3rd round pick when there was other guys there. So I think that it's a cautionary tale. Obviously, some people are, quite frankly, there's probably always going to be at least one person in my drafts that likes Jahmyr Gibbs better than me. I don't know how many more shares. Like you, I actually got in on him in a couple of best balls prior to the NFL draft and in the 5th round, right? And so then I was really happy about that. I don't really foresee myself getting a whole lot more of Jahmyr Gibbs shares based on how the high-stakes players are treating him. Now, Dalvin Cook, let's talk about him because right now we are completely drafting blind. We have no idea where he's going to sign. Well, maybe we have some idea where he's going to sign. Running back 25 at the 6'10 right now is where Cook is. He is going behind the aforementioned DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, and Rashad White. He's going ahead of James Conner, Isaiah Pacheco, and David Montgomery. So that's what we're looking at with Cook. Now, I know this does not necessarily fall in with how you normally like to formulate your best ball teams and construct them. But Dalvin Cook, if he's staring at you at the end of the 6th round, is this a guy you want to be in business with? Because as soon as he signs, I'd like to believe his ADP is going to shoot up maybe a round and a half.
Yeah, it depends on where he goes. I mean, please, I don't want him to go to Miami. I have so many shares of. I have a good amount of A-Chain pre-draft. or even right after the draft. But I've been grabbing Jeff Wilson a bunch too.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and Jeff Wilson's in the 14th round or whatever, so like no big loss. But it really depends on where Cook lands, and I need to look again at how Cook did last year. But like, he's not going to get the number of touches, is he? Like, is there a bell cow type role available anywhere?
No, I mean not as it stands.
Right.
He got basically last year. He played number one. He played in all 17 games, which is good. He got just under 1,200 yards on the ground. Only had 200-yard games. He did get eight rushing touchdowns. He tallied another 2 catching the football. 39 catches, 295 yards. I mean, it is what it is. But the fact that he can go into a certain state, maybe you're right. Maybe he doesn't. It's just not in the cards for him to shoot up around round and a half, unless there is some sort of injury, and then a potential starting running back, maybe not a bell cow position, but the lead ball carrier in a certain backfield, because, similar to what happened with Cam Akers a couple of years ago, right? I mean, that opened up a ton of touches for Darrell Henderson. So I don't know. I guess maybe he's waiting for an injury. He's waiting for a situation to open up. But yeah, I mean, right now he's just going to be another cog in the machine, no matter where he goes, the way I see it.
Yeah. And at 6'10", he becomes an option at 6'10". I think I don't start really scooping him back up until maybe he hits the 8th round.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is a point where you go, okay, now I can take the risk, or now I'm willing to. But I just usually I envision a landing spot where he fits in. And yeah, Miami, he would fit in, but I don't think he gets over 50% of the touches in Miami either.
He can't. I mean, there's just no way.
Right. Yeah. And Miami, he doesn't fit in Miami. I know that's all the chatter, and I keep bringing it up because it's the chatter, but he doesn't fit their scheme. It would totally go against everything they're doing there in Miami. It doesn't make any sense. And maybe that's what I'm looking for, somewhere where it makes sense. The Giants, I don't see the Giants paying him. No, that's the thing. Nobody's going to pay him what he wants to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
The Vikings are going to be on the hook. He most likely goes back to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
But then Minnesota has plenty of options too. They could just turn to Fournette. I don't know.
I think it was Austin Martin on the GOAT District podcast a week or two ago. Said, who could use a running back like Dalvin Cook? The Minnesota Vikings.
You're dead right. That is, that's another guy I listen to too.
Yeah. The thing is this is, we're probably not seeing this situation resolve itself anytime soon, and that's the thing. And I think you pointed out too, 6'10", you consider him there, but
he's 28 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Who nobody's going to pay a 28-year-old.
His best football is pretty much inarguably behind him.
Yeah.
Right. So
and he can be adequate. He can be good, but he's going to make $23 million for sitting on his ass.
Yeah. I think about too, Aaron Jones could have been in this situation this year, but he ended up taking this pay cut to stick with the Packers, essentially. Giving up $5+ million, I think what it was, because he and his agent could see, look, if the Packers are going to release you, you have one of the highest cap numbers for any running back in NFL history. Unless you restructure, you're going to be on the open market. This is what happened to Dalvin Cook, and now we don't know what he's going to get paid. It may be very little too.
This is why it's time for Barkley to hold out.
Mm-hmm.
As when running backs hold out, I gotta watch. I gotta listen. It becomes important, and Dalvin's not holding out. But how much does he cut his salary in order to play? It just doesn't make sense financially. It's tough.
It's very tough, and people who are facing him on the clock in their queue at that 6-7 turn. It's going to be a tough decision to make. I don't know if we have the answers on this, but we can definitely tell you that to consider them there. Obviously, as always, look at your team construction, look at what your team looks like thus far, and then make the best possible decision with all that information here. We are way up against it. I want to step out and take a quick break. When we come back with Kev Wheeler from the 33rd team, he's going to tell us some of the targets and fades he's looking at in the FFPC Best Ball tournament, as well as what he has done so far this year in all the national tournaments he's been participating in. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. We will roll on with much more fantasy goodness right here on the Better Sports Network after this.
What can we expect from you out there on the track tonight?
Listen, I have a wife, 2 kids. I have, full-time jobs. I'm never nervous. I don't even know what that word means. Can you explain what nervous means? No. I'm ready to have fun. I've never done anything like this before. I got asked to be a part of this. This is fascinating. Like, it's so cool to just look around and see what goes on here. So I'm just excited to get out on the horse. And you want trash talk? Is that what you're asking me for? No trash talk. I hope everyone does well.
All right. Everyone's going to do well, but it has to be a winner. So give me your trifecta. Who's going to come in first, second, and third? Your heat.
I will go Maria 1, me 2, Willie 3, Moose goes 4th.
Well, it's very simple. I won this event last year. I won my heat, and so the defending champ has to be the favorite. Now, that makes me a little nervous just because I feel like it's hard to repeat. There's a little pressure when you're the favorite, but that being said, I'm still optimistic.
So your heat, it's you,
yes.
Moose and Keith from Better Sports Network, and Willie Colon.
I think Keith might be my stiffest competition, and I asked for this because I actually recruited Keith, if you didn't know. So Keith, if you win, you're welcome.
Malusis is very good. I mean, he knows what he's doing, but I'm going to go with Maria.
Keith is waving to the crowd. He must pay attention because they're off. It's Mark Malusis going for the lead. Maria Marino on the outside, and now Keith Irizarry on the outside with speed, and they're 3 wide into the first turn. Woo! Mark Malusis is locked in for his life. 138 and 2. They're into the stretch. Sportscasters Derby 2. And still in front, Keith Irizarry. And now Mark Malusis is trying to squeeze on through.
Come on! Come on! Let's go! Come on, dig it! Yeah!
Keith Irizarry. Keith, you did it all the way, wire to wire, over Mark Malusis.
Awesome! That was so cool!
The champ is here! Keith, what was it like being out there? Adrenaline rush. You were doing the Instagram Live, so there was no panic. You looked cool, calm, collected the whole time, and you won it.
I felt really comfortable. I did. Like, I know you were joking with me before. Are you nervous? Are you whatever? What are you? David, the driver, was awesome. He's like, we're going to win this. I said, all right, let's win this. And he said, let's go. Yeah, I just felt really comfortable. I did. It was fun. We're in the lead. I got Maria Marino on the right side of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to beat us, right? And then out of nowhere, you see Moose coming up this way, and we feel him breathing down our neck. And I'm like,
Moose
no,
on the loose. Watch out.
Moose was definitely on the loose, and we just got Moose by a neck, a nose, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but again, all of this for a great cause, and it was absolutely awesome to do this. It was cool.
All right, Keith, congratulations, and no matter what, you could always hold this over Moose's head.
Yeah!
It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network.
13 minutes past the top of the hour here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, getting into hour number 2 a little bit late. This is what happens when you try to figure out what to do with Dalvin Cook at the end of the 6th round in the FFPC Best Ball tournament. He is Kev Wheeler from the 33rd team. Follow him on Twitter right now, ladies and gentlemen. You probably already are, but if you're not, at FF_Wheeler. Remember to register. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC, by the way. Register for your Dynasty startup drafts now at myffpc.com from the $100 level all the way to the $5,000 level. We've been doing Dynasty for nearly a decade, well over 1,300 leagues. Not a single one's ever folded. Go to myffpc.com to register for that. And don't forget about the Fantasy Pros Championship, $1 million grand prize in that, just $350 to enter. It's the first time we've ever done it, and drafts are filling every day. You won't be waiting long. So go over to myffpc.com and let your fun begin today. Let's let our fun begin with FFPC Best Ball Tournament targets and fades. And we'll take it position by position. We'll kick it off with the running backs. Derrick Henry. This is a player that I keep waiting for him to fall off the face of the earth, Kev, and he refuses to. He refuses to quit. Running back 9 is where he's going in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament right now. You're looking at, if you want to get Derrick Henry on your squad, you have to invest a 212 pick into him. So he's going at that 2-3 turn. Start off your draft with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. You could easily get Derrick Henry at the turn there. Is Henry a guy you want to be in business with, given that he's going all the way at the end of the second round?
Yes, please. Yeah. And I'll take him mid, sometimes even early second round, depending on I've taken him early second round earlier in the year when I thought that's where he should go. I've been letting him fall there. Like, if you can tell me I can get Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase and then follow it up with Derrick Henry, yes, please.
You're all aboard for that.
Yeah. Especially like when you're playing in these tournaments in weeks 15, 16, and 17 are where the big money is. He plays the Houston Texans twice. If he makes it 17 games, he's gonna win you your league. Like, he's gonna crush in the playoffs. Like, the big question mark is, does he make it, right? Does he make it to 17 weeks? I think he maybe gets a slightly reduced for Derrick Henry workload, which puts him, at that 65 to 75% of the touches level, which helps his longevity throughout the season. They got Tajay Spears. Like, Tajay Spears has no knees, but I keep saying, like, Tajay Spears isn't a dynasty guy. He is a best ball guy. So if you want to get Derrick Henry in the second and follow it up with Tajay in the 15th, 16th, that's another fine stack cuff or handcuff. My general philosophy when it comes to handcuffing, I don't like it. But what I generally do as a general rule of thumb, I add up the rounds they were taken in. If they add up to over 20, you're gold.
Okay.
So, like, okay, that would mean you would have to get Tajay Spears in the 18th. I'm willing to, cut some slack if you want to feel more secure about your Derrick Henry pick. But I don't even need it. Like, I generally don't draft them in the same draft. But yeah, I'm all in on Derrick Henry. If for no other reason that when he plays, he's dominant. So maybe he's even better in redraft, right? Because when he's injured, you can replace him. Yeah, the hope is that he ends up playing 17 weeks though, or at least plays those last 3 games, and wins you your league.
I think it all changed. I used to be like a religious handcuffer. Like, I would do that all the time. And then there was a year where the Arian Foster, Ben Tate year, where Foster was like a first or a second round pick, and then Tate was like a 6th or 7th. And I'm like, God, I am really hamstringing my team here if I, utilize a 6th round pick on Ben Tate after I take Arian Foster. And that's sort of when I got opened up to the idea of like, okay, I should probably not be handcuffing at this, especially if I'm playing in a national tournament. Like I play in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, and you're trying to beat out 1,000+ teams there. It's like, I'm going to take my elite running back early, my Derrick Henry early, and then I'm going to take other people's handcuffs, right? Because it increases the variance, and obviously this is how you win by having teams like that. That's where I stand on it. And I think, and the other thing I'll point out too, kind of what you said, if you don't like Henry, if you don't think he's going to get it done this year, then yeah, you should be drafting Tajay Spears in the 14th, 15th round or whatever it is, because he should be in for a big year if you don't like Henry. Another guy that injury really destroyed him a couple of years ago, Cam Akers. Is he a target for you right now? He's running back 23 at the 608. This is DeAndre Swift, Rashad White territory, Dalvin Cook territory as well. Cam Akers in Los Angeles, the team's not what it used to be, but it's still, he is still the guy to draft as far as the starting running back goes in Los Angeles. Do you like him in the late 6th round?
Yeah. I can't say I know I'm overloaded on him. I'm probably somewhere in the vicinity of 20%. It's generally around I'm looking more at receiver, or if a quarterback slides, you could Herbert's been sliding a little bit lately. But yes, and Cam Akers in the 6th, I'm great with. I think that's a fine RB2 for you. His last 4 games, he had over 100 yards in every game. I don't want to say he's back to 100%, but he's close enough. And look, at the beginning of last season, they wanted to start Kyren Williams. I think that was a report. And Kyren Williams, like literally in the first play of his NFL career, which was on special teams, he got hurt. So we never got to see that. So yeah, there's probably some timeshare, but I still think Akers is around that 60% of the touches. He's the main back. And, the Rams aren't what they used to be, but they have most of the key components to that offense, and they have no defense.
Right.
So, if they can put it together, they could be in some shootouts. It's another, I don't want to say this out loud because I don't think I have enough of them, but Stafford is going 13th, 14th, 15th round. That shouldn't happen. I guess it depends on what platform you're on, but
14th round in the FFPC, quarterback 23.
That doesn't seem right to me.
No.
There are several guys I would put him ahead of, and I just haven't. I don't have enough of Stafford because I usually have my second quarterback by then, or I'm planning on, a Mac Jones or a Sam Howell later. But yeah, I kind of like the Rams where they're priced. I love Akers where he's priced. If he was getting up to that 5th or 4th round, no. But in the 6th round, yeah, I'll take all the Akers you got for me.
Akers, running back 23 to 608. The next Rams running back not drafted until the 17th round. That's Zach Evans, the rookie, running back 63, the aforementioned Kyren Williams, running back 84 in the 20th round. That's what we're looking at there. We amid all this Dalvin Cook talk, we did not break down the Minnesota backfield. And I don't know if there's a ton to break down here. You look at Alexander Madison is the guy that everybody wants. He's running back 20 at the 601. I think what's more interesting is the Ty Chandler versus Dwayne McBride. It's been a topic of conversation on this show the last several weeks here. Chandler was a guy that I don't know how much you drafted of him last year, Kev, but this year Dwayne McBride seems to be the Ty Chandler. Dwayne McBride is this year's Ty Chandler, right? And it's so weird because you have all these people fighting for these guys saying, oh, it's Chandler, oh, it's McBride. As far as the guy behind the guy goes now in Minnesota, are you a Chandler guy or are you a McBride guy?
I'm a mix-it-up guy.
Mix-it-up guy, okay.
And that's a fence-sitting cop-out, but it's true. Bradley.
Stalder?
Yeah. He pre-draft anyway. He was high on Dwayne McBride. Actually, it might have been pre-combine because I don't think McBride did that great at the combine. But he has just as many chances for touches now as Chandler, and Evan Silva is high on Chandler. So I'll mix them both. I trust Bradley. Evan Silva's. I don't trust everything he says, but there's enough there, right? That we have to give them both consideration. The one guy I haven't been scooping up is Madison.
It's too high for him, too high of a price to pay.
Yeah. If Madison was going, I couldn't even tell you where he's going now because he's not even on my radar at that point. If he was going after Akers, maybe I would consider him, but I think I still like Montgomery better than Madison. Maybe not. I really think either Dalvin Cook comes back or they find somebody else, or they really like Chandler or McBride. I don't think Madison ends up with a greater than 50% share of the touches. one of these other guys or both of them could cut into that.
Right. And I think the other thing that we should bring up, and God, my apologies, I'm going to forget who tweeted this out, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Maybe Minnesota with drafting Jordan Addison this year, and obviously the midseason trade of TJ Hawkinson, they already have KJ Osborne, who looked like he was kind of breaking out last year, and the Justin Jefferson, the best receiver in football. Maybe they're just going to sling it all over the field, and the running game is a little bit overrated this year. I don't know. There's at least the non-zero chance that happens too, where maybe none of these guys return the fantasy value of where they're being drafted right now. I think that's a possibility as well. Better Boss chiming in, Dwayne McBride. He's Team McBride for going forward as far as the guy behind the guy in Minnesota. That is the running backs. Let's move on to the tight ends, and I guess we'll shift from one McBride to the other. Trey McBride in Arizona. This is a player who was the first tight end off the board last year in a pretty bad tight end rookie class, Kev. But now you look at him in Arizona, we don't know who the quarterback is going to be, at least to start the season. We have an idea. And we know Kyler Murray at least is slated to come back at some point this season off his torn ACL. But McBride in Arizona this year, second-year tight end. This is when we normally like to draft him in redraft. Tight end 24 at the 14-11. That doesn't seem right. He should be going higher.
Yeah, and I was the one pushing him up draft boards early in the season. I had to back off just because I was getting way too much exposure. And when I backed off, all of a sudden he's going in the 18th, 19th. Well, it depends on your – I'm sure in FFPC he's not going in the 18th, 19th, 20th.
No,
but
14th round right now.
All other non-tight end premium platforms he is. 14th round. If he fits into it, that's the thing. I think he's fading because nobody's stacking him with anybody Cardinals, right? He would be a bring back to the Eagles if you're looking for week 17 correlation. Sorry about that.
That's right.
But I think that's why he's kind of faded too. Yeah, I see McBride getting a good amount of targets. I don't see Ertz coming back. Even if he does come back, I don't think he's very effective.
And no Hopkins, obviously, too.
Right. And that's McBride really surged when Ertz was out and Hopkins was injured. I like Trey McBride, but I think he's probably priced appropriately at this point, given the fact that we don't know if Kyler is actually going to come back, right? Like if they slate him to come back in week 6 or 7 and they're 0-6, why? I mean, NFL teams do. NFL teams want to see the guy play. They don't want to give him the full year off. So I guess there's a chance that Kyler comes back and maybe McBride is a value. Yeah. I mean, I have nothing against them. I had to kind of step back and put the little fade on McBride, and, but when I see him in non-tight end premium formats going in those last 3 rounds, it's time to scoop him up. If for no other reason, any Hurts team you have, you should be looking at McBride towards the end, just for that week 17.
Getting back to running backs real quick, the Better Boss wants to know. I guess we'll make this short and sweet. We'll make our bold predictions here. Where are Ezekiel Elliott and where are Leonard Fournette? Where are they signing this year? So maybe this is a hot take. Maybe it's not. It's probably not hot anymore. I think Elliott signs with the Cowboys. I think he goes back there. Fournette's interesting. If I had to pick one spot right now, I mean, Denver, maybe. It's so tough because I just don't know. Like, Fournette might be the type of guy that you sign once your running back depth goes to pot and you need somebody. I don't necessarily know. I mean, he might not be with the team at the start of the NFL season, but I feel pretty okay about a prediction of Elliott going to Dallas, Kev.
Yeah, I kind of like the Dalvin Cook thing. Who else wants,
where are the openings right now?
You know what? Arizona. He's going to follow the Oh, what the hell was the Dallas running back that went to Arizona to finish his career?
Emmitt Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to follow that same
Emmitt Smith's
pattern.
career
Just,
path.
just go to Arizona. That's where everybody out west goes to retire, I think. But yeah, I just don't see anybody valuing Zeke as much as Jerry does.
You know, and I'm looking at the teams right now. I mean, obviously, the Raiders would be a possibility for Fournette or for potentially Elliott. I mean, depending upon how this
Fournette is going to go to a contender. Like Fournette is waiting for a contender. Fournette has said outwardly that he wants to win. Like, I guess he made his money and he's not all that concerned about it. He's come out and said he wants to go to a winner. Like, he enjoyed being with Tom Brady because he likes winning. He spent the first 4 years of his career in misery over in Jacksonville, not winning. So, like, I think that's it. And I kind of like Fournette with the Vikings. But then again, that becomes a crowded situation. It's really tough. Like, there aren't.
What about what about this one? What about Baltimore?
Dobbins isn't practicing yet, right? I have so much Dobbins. This is going to kill me.
This was like breaking when we were doing the first hour.
Right.
I didn't bring it up, but Harbaugh said he was missing because of some soft tissue injury, and then Dobbins came out and said, "No, it's because I'm not happy with my contract." So that could be interesting.
Isn't Dobbins still on his rookie deal?
I don't know. Maybe he just wants to get paid now because he already had that knee injury. And he doesn't want to, he knows how fragile his career is. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
That could be. I actually feel better about that because I don't think that holdout would last. I think Baltimore says, okay, here goes an extra $1 million. Get your butt in practice.
Right.
Like,
just throw it out there.
Because at that rate, it's a matter of principle. Like, but I mean, if Dobbins were to hold out, Fournette in Baltimore would be like, woo-hoo.
He's going into his contract year. I'm looking at it right now. Dobbins did not say whether he was dealing with the injury or not. Bill Hollywood also saying that New England has always wanted Leonard Fournette as well. That's totally true. I could see that as well, especially considering James Robinson is no longer there.
You know what?
I have never shared this Leonard Fournette story on this show. I'll share it real quick. I have a friend who I went to high school with, and she moved down to the Baton Rouge area, and she worked at a sports bar down there and managed it for many years. Leonard Fournette, in his LSU days, used to come in once or twice a week. He would get the spin dip, Kev. That'd be his food du jour, but he wouldn't use the chips to eat it. He would just grab a spoon and just eat the spin dip with a spoon. And he was also a notoriously bad tipper. So maybe the money doesn't mean a whole lot to him because he's been saving his money all these years. The possibility.
Well, he was a college kid. Like, I'm willing to cut some slack.
Oh yeah,
on that.
And that was before. That was pre-NIL, right?
So like, eating dip with a spoon is
he's a big man. I mean, like, you got to get those calories in somehow, dude.
Yeah. Oh. That's just, this old man. That's not going to hit the belly very well.
And he probably went out and lifted and then ran and he burned it off in a half hour anyway. So what's the difference?
It's Fat Lenny.
Yes, Fat Lenny indeed. Cole Kmet, getting back to the tight ends. Why is he a value in FFPC drafts this year? Knowing that Justin Fields will now not only have Chase Claypool for a full season, he gets DJ Moore there as well. We can't forget about Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I like Kmet. Again, he's another one that I drafted a whole bunch in the beginning of the year and kind of have just my exposure. I want to limit my exposure on certain players, so I haven't drafted them lately. But yes, if I draft Fields, I will stack him with Kmet. And Fields has been dropping a little bit late. I think with the Lamar surge, Fields has kind of dropped a little bit. So I've been scooping up a little more Fields. Whenever I have Fields, I'm going to stack him with Kmet. Kmet will probably be second in targets.
Behind Moore?
Yeah. I just think Claypool and Mooney kind of they'll get their share, but I think Kmet serves as that kind of relief valve. I do think they should limit Fields running a little bit. Not drastically, but Kmet would be important in that. they have a triumvirate of backs that they can use too. So I just think he's a quality tight end that when you draft Fields, you should stack with a tight end.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know a lot of people have been doing that in the FFPC as well. Cole Kmet, tight end 16 right now is where he's going, which I think is a little bit, it's lower than where he was going last year. But cash in on the value when you can now. Okay, so moving to Denver, the last thing I want to bring up here, tight end situation in Denver. Greg Dulcich, tight end 14 at the 10-10. Albert Okwuepenam, tight end 41, the reciprocal of 14. 41 going in the 19th round in the FFPC Best Ball tournament. We've heard Sean Payton be less than enthusiastic, to put it nicely, about Greg Dulcich before. What about Albert Okwuepenam in the 19th round? Is that a better value for you than investing a 10th round pick in a Dulcich?
So it was until this week. Peyton has come out and said they want to use Dulcich all around the field. Yeah. I caught it in the tweet, and I'm trying to look it up, but I can't spell his name. But yes.
I got it. So this was the trick is trying to predict what you're going to get defensively if you're going to get a nickel or base. Now this is Peyton on Dulcich. He can run. He's got good ball skills. You build on that. His menu is going to be lengthy in the passing game, and there's enough stuff we can do in the run game. So he's going to use them all over the field, like you said. So now all of a sudden, okay, let's flip it. Dulcich in the 10th round. Is this a good time to be buying on him, Kev?
I mean, 10th rounds.
10th round tight end premium, obviously.
Right. It's a tough decision for me, especially when you've got a guy like Cole Kmet going later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just his price range. And if you want to stack him, the quarterback is going after him. So you have to plan on that beforehand. It just seems like too expensive a price for me. And especially with Albert O looming right there, and that could be we're going to use them all around the field as such the coach speak. Whenever anybody says we're going to use them all around the field, I think Jonnu Smith. Okay. In spurts, sure, fine. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people high on Dulcich, and if the coach is coming around to him like they did last year, there's no reason to believe he won't pay off value in the 10th round. I'm just looking at it that's not a zone that I'm necessarily looking at tight end in. There's a lot of potential boom tight ends a few rounds later. He's not a premium asset. There's a lot of receivers there until they trade Sutton or something. It just seems the cliche, too many mouths to feed. Mm-hmm. It just seems like that's the case there. I don't dislike him. I don't, and even the price isn't horrible. Maybe just if he goes in the 12th, all of a sudden I've got my eye on him.
Right.
But I like to stack my tight ends too, and usually I have a quarterback before Russell Wilson. I've been blending him in a little bit, maybe. And previous to this news, Albert O was my sneaky little tight end at the back there. He's not so sneaky anymore. I'm going to have to start drafting a little bit of Dulcich just so I'm at least even with the field on him.
Dulcich is going right now ahead of, and these are some guys we already talked about, Kmet, obviously, but Tyler Higbee, he's going in front of Higbee. We talked about the potential for some Rams shootouts this year. He could be involved in that. Sam Laporta, who it seems like everybody's excited about, even as a rookie in Detroit. And then a guy who's been building up a lot of steam over the last couple of weeks, Juwan Johnson, going in the 11th round as well. Let's step out and take our final break. James Martin is chiming in the YouTube chat. Do y'all play Dynasty? Yes, we play Dynasty. If you have a Dynasty question, fire away at us, James, in the final segment. When we come back, We talked about the running backs and the tight ends as far as targets and fades go in the FFPC Best Ball tournament. Let's get into the receivers and quarterbacks. He's Kev Wheeler from the 33rd team at FF_Wheeler. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. Stick around. We'll be right back after this.
The High Stakes Fantasy Football Show with Eric Balkman.
I feel like this is a quietly contentious point in Dynasty Fantasy Football, what it means to actually be rebuilding. Some people say you should never truly be rebuilding. How do you view the rebuilding versus competing dichotomy in Dynasty?
So I will be the first person to acknowledge that my preferred format of fantasy football is just redraft. The years that I have played Dynasty, it has been, I've drafted a win now team because I've seen people that have just gotten into the cycle of rebuilding and thus they just don't make any progress. So if you're rebuilding for the 5th year in a row, I just, I don't know exactly how you get out of it, but yeah, it's definitely something that can happen. And a lot of people, especially when we come out of the NFL draft, everyone's just instantly shipping off, draft picks and everything. So, I mean, it's definitely something that can happen.
Joey, do you feel similarly to it? Do you feel like you see people getting stuck in the rebuilding loop?
I mean, I would say people that try to rebuild in the beginning of seasons, of their fantasy seasons, I see them get stuck in that rut. I would really try to only ever rebuild if I knew I was going to miss the playoffs. Like, I'm always trying to play to win, even if it's maybe I don't know.
I think my big thing is the word rebuild is a much shorter time frame than I think most people say it should be. Like, they look at rebuild as like 3 years out competing. Rebuild, you're looking to compete next season. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing it now, you're looking to revamp, and maybe there's a one season where you ship it off, but that very next season you should be competing. If you're doing it like that, I'm cool with it, but you gotta have a plan, not just keep getting the young players, keep getting the draft picks. Otherwise, you end up like Tim. Maybe not like Tim who gets a bye, but you make the playoffs, you're in that like 4 to 6 range every year, just hovering in the middle. Nothing ever gets better, nothing ever gets worse.
I think I play like you in Dynasty, Simon. I play in 3-year windows.
100%. That's my go-to. And with the rate at which Dynasty leagues turn over, you should really only ever play in a 3-year window.
It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network.
19 minutes until we kick things over to Garrett Price and the Dynasty Nerds to take you into Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Kev Wheeler from the 33rd team at FF_Wheeler on Twitter is joining me as my guest co-host this week on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. Listen, we're all fired up for fantasy football, and it has come, ladies and gentlemen. This is the week. Fantasy football is here at the Fantasy Alarm. The Fantasy Alarm Fantasy Football Draft Guide is now available, $26.99, or you can get it free with a monthly or annual all-pro subscription to Fantasy Alarm. You can start your free, F-R-E-E, if it's free, it's me, 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm All-Pro and get immediate free access to the draft guide. Go to fantasyalarm.com, fantasyalarm.com. We got through the running back and tight ends that I wanted to talk to you about. Kev, let's kick off the wide receivers with a guy who's going to be not playing at the start of the season again this year. No, not because he tore his ACL. This time because he's suspended for gambling. It's 2023. I can't believe this is what we're saying, but this is what's happening. Jameson Williams won't be playing for the first 6 games of the season because of gambling. Is he a good best ball pick for you? Wide receiver 49 at the 10:06 right now.
I love him at the 10:06. I was loving him in the 7th, even the 6th round of best balls early in the season. Yeah, I was definitely chasing the Jameson bandwagon, but yeah, he's dropped. I was overweight on him. I've lightened my exposure, but he's a great best ball pick. We were talking about several players who, for the first few weeks, we don't expect much from. So we don't expect anything from Jameson for 6 weeks. He gets 6 weeks to make sure he's completely healthy and back from that injury. And yeah, at the end of last season, they barely used him, but they're not letting him go. He made a stupid mistake. He's a young kid. I'm hoping Mr. Bite Them Kneecaps, Jason Campbell.
Dan Campbell.
Dan
Jason
Campbell.
the
Sorry.
former quarterback for the
Sorry.
Washington.
Yeah. My bad.
Maybe Jason Campbell was a kneecap fighter too. You never know.
I mean, he seemed like it a little bit.
If I had to go through 5 offensive coordinators in 4 years, I'd be biting some kneecaps too.
That might be the reason they kept leaving. Not joking. But yeah, I like his potential upside. I like the fact that he can play X receiver, and Jared Goff is going to be looking for that guy at that time. And I'm trying to think. Marvin Jones and actually Josh Reynolds can kind of cover you. You can grab them in the super late rounds, if not the last round of your draft, if you're worried about your first 6 weeks. But I'm not even worried about the first 6 weeks. Jameson in the 10th as your wide receiver 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a no-brainer. Click on that all day long.
Was it you? You might even coin this, but I was listening to the GOAT District podcast when you guys are doing a live draft. And it was either you or JD or somebody said that you have to come up with a code name for Jameson Williams.
That was me.
That was you.
Whiskey Bill.
Whiskey Bill is what we're referring to Jameson Williams as, to not drive up his ADP. And people are like, who's Whiskey Bill? Don't worry about it.
That's the same thing we did with Bobby Trees.
Bobby Trees is another one. Absolutely.
We can now call him Robert Woods, though, because,
Now we want to. We want to drive his ADP. Yeah. Exactly. Speaking of a guy who it might have his ADP driven up, Michael Gallup, is he going to bounce back this year? The year, he's a full year past the ACL tear. He's got to contend with Brandon Cooks, but no Dalton Schultz in this offense.
I mean, he'll probably have less targets than he did 2 years ago when he had 1,000 yards. Was it 2 years ago? But he's going to be that stretch Y. And actually, he's more versatile than just not the stretch Z. I'm sorry. He's more versatile than a stretch Z. He's going to get their third best defensive back or maybe even he's not going to be well covered.
Right.
The CD Lamb's going to draw at least double coverage pretty much all day long. Brandon Cooks is going rocket ships to the moon. I'm taking him, but that's going to leave Gallup open. You can't cover all 3 of these guys. If Gallup is fully healthy, he's going in the 12th, 13th.
Gallup right now is going in the 14th, wide receiver 64.
Maybe that's the problem. I'm drafting him in the 12th and 13th. Yeah.
Oh, so you're the guy.
I am the guy.
Yeah,
I am the guy. He's a value in the 12th.
Yeah.
Like,
go ahead.
Yeah, I fully see him bouncing back. Last year I think it was obvious he wasn't fully back.
And we've always heard it. Like it takes a full year, from these ACL tears.
And the offense is set to slow down, but does it appear that way? Like they talk about wanting to run the ball and slow the clock, but they get Brandon Cooks, Gallup's back from injury. They're going with Pollard. Like that doesn't
not a
like
whole lot else in that backfield.
Yeah.
You don't have a banger in that backfield.
Right. Like Ronald Jones. No, that doesn't like that's their only grinder type, right? What they say and their actions are speaking 2 different things. So maybe they slow it down and maybe there's fewer plays, but they're going to have an easier time getting open just because of that addition of Brandon Cooks over Dalton Schultz.
Shifting over to Indianapolis, Alec Pierce is wide receiver 70 in the 15th round. Josh Downs is wide receiver 82 in the 18th round. And I think the commentary I have here is if the Colts would not have drafted Josh Downs, Pierce would be going a lot higher. Should we be letting the presence of Josh Downs scare us off Alec Pierce at that ADP?
Absolutely not. Josh Downs is 170 pounds and slower than the 6'3", 208 Alex Pierce.
Mm-hmm.
I see Josh Downs maybe being a Curtis Samuel type, right? But it took Curtis Samuel a few years to really break the mold in the or really do anything in the NFL. Yeah, I'm not. I don't think I have any Josh Downs at all in Dynasty or Best Ball. I just think he's kind of overvalued. He went in the 3rd round. That's nice, but he's not particularly fast. He's got some good burst and agility, and he's kind of that, can dump it off to him and make something happen kind of guy. But he did that in college at North Carolina. I don't know if that translates to the NFL.
Getting back to Jason Campbell's old NFL team, the Washington Commanders, Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett, who do you put your chips on in best ball drafts right now?
Sam Howell all day, every day. And I've been scooping him up in Dynasty. Like in Superflex Dynasty leagues, you can trade away a 3rd round pick or a late 2nd and snag Howell. Howell's going to start the season. Do I expect Howell to break the mold and become this amazing quarterback? No, but I think he's going to start 17 games. He's in a Superflex league. He's a fantastic QB3, in my opinion. Brissett is a solid backup. At best, Brissett starts a few games at the beginning of the season, but I just think, everybody's saying they have to see what they have in Howell. And while, Howell isn't this Konami code kind of, going to take designed runs quarterback, he does have scramble ability. He showed it in North Carolina. I believe he had 700 yards rushing one year, but that was out of necessity. I don't like that tactical scramble, look downfield, and if there's nothing downfield, he can get you that 10 yards of that first down. That's what you're going to look for in this young type of quarterback. And even if he comes out of the gate and throws 3 interceptions in a couple games, I think they only sit him until Brissett does the same thing. Brissett's going to take you to a 500 record if you've got a quality team. I'm not saying Sam Howell's a world beater, but I think he makes your team better. I think it adds an extra weapon.
And he's going to have some weapons to work with this. Dotson. I just read a piece that the Commanders are expected to use the tight end a lot in their offense this year too. And then obviously we talked about Gibson in the first hour too. So it's going to be a fun situation to watch for fantasy. Deshaun Watson predictably showed up a little bit rusty when he came back in week 13, 14, whatever it was last year when he took over for Brissett. Why will he or won't he bounce back in 2023, Kev?
Look, he's a scumbag, but I think I'm up to 40% ownership on him.
Wow. That is a lot.
I can't. He's in the 8th round. All right. So Hurts won me a ton of money last year getting him in the 6th and 7th round. I don't see a ton of difference between what Deshaun Watson brings to the table and what Jalen Hurts brings to the table.
Yeah. Quarterback 9 at the 7-10 right now in the FFPC Best Ball tournament.
Yeah. I can't stop, especially when you can stack them with Njoku and Elijah Moore right afterwards, or if you've taken Amari Cooper early just because Amari Cooper seems to be there, just sitting there all the time for me in that late 3rd, early 4th. So yeah, I see Watson, and I did it. Like I said to myself today, I'm in the middle of a slow draft, and I'm like, it was like I feel like it was like the 8-10, and I'm like, I need to start backing off, but how? I was like, I don't even have them stacked yet, but it's like the next 2 rounds I can do it. Yeah, I just think I think he's so undervalued. And it's because when he came back last year, he looked like poop.
Right.
But,
and I'm telling you this too, and you alluded to this. If Hopkins does come back to Cleveland, Cooper, Hopkins, and Njoku, Chubb in the backfield, Sounds a lot like what Philadelphia had last year too. So you make a good point there about that.
I don't even think they need Hopkins. Like they have enough weapons.
Yeah, with Moore and DPJ. Yeah, I get it.
I mean, if they get Hopkins, holy cow! Like
it'd be wheels up.
Wheels up for Watson. I think I would have to like fade everybody else unless they drop a couple rounds because that's a lot of mouths to feed. But.
And Watson, obviously, he would shoot up an ADP at that point, and then maybe it gets a little bit untenable for you because you already have all those shares late.
Right.
Let's get into one final quarterback question. Jared Goff, are we undervaluing him once again? Quarterback 16 at the 1104 with Laporta, St. Brown, Williams, obviously, Gibbs, everybody. He's got all these weapons. Are we undervaluing him as fantasy owners?
Yeah. Let me take a look here. Like
he is going right behind Richardson, Geno Smith, and Daniel Jones. He is going ahead of Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Derek Carr, and Jordan Love right now.
Look, I can't make an argument to put him. I mean, I guess I could make an argument to put him ahead of Geno Smith and Anthony Richardson, but I'm not going to make that argument. I guess where he's going is fine, but he's at least Kirk Cousins. He's probably at least Dak Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
Just with all the weapons, what he did last year, like for when Goff was on the Rams, I thought he was all hype. I didn't think he was any good. But like what I started to see him do last year started to get me on that Goff bandwagon. Like, yeah, it was a strong Rams team that he took to the Super Bowl, but he has a supporting cast again. Like they are primed to make a run. They almost made the playoffs last year. Like I don't see any reason why they can't do that this year. I think he'll be a solid quarterback. I think he has the weapons to do it with. I don't see any reason. I have no hesitation drafting him where he's going. And I would even like if I'm grabbing Jameson Williams, I'm certainly looking to stack him with Goff.
For sure. Yeah, and it makes I'm going to have a lot of Goff. I can tell you right now, I'm going to have a lot of Goff this year because I don't really envision his ADP rising a whole lot. We talked a lot of fantasy football tonight. If you are betting, make sure you are going to fantasyalarm.com/FanDuel. Deposit $10 or more. Your first bet up to $2,500. You get $2,500 in bonus bets back if you lose. FantasyAlarm.com/DraftKings. You're going to get bet $5. You get $200. That is limited through this weekend, through June 18th. FantasyAlarm.com/BetMGM. You get $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win. Again, FantasyAlarm.com/BetMGM. Up to $1,250 back on your first bet. 1,000 tier credits, 1,000 reward credits using the promo code FULLFA. Full FA at fantasyalarm.com/Caesars. And of course, a deposit match up to $100 using promo code ALARM at fantasyalarm.com/prizepicks. Join the incredibly popular $1 million Superflex every day during the NBA Finals. I assume that Prize Picks still has everything going on there. Kev, we appreciate it, man. We will continue to follow you at FF_Wheeler and check out anything you're doing at the33rdteam.com.
Appreciate it.
Kev Wheeler, ladies and gentlemen. Next week, Billy Muzio from Player Profiler. Remember, get over to myffpc.com. The Fantasy Pros Championship. Tonight is the last night you get in on that early bird deal. Register by midnight Pacific time tonight. Draft by June 30th. Free $35 FFPC league credit. The main event is paying out $1 million once again this year. We talked a lot of FFPC Best Ball tournament tonight. $200,000 grand prize in that. $50,000 grand prize in the Superflex tournament. Garrett Price and the Dynasty Nerds are up next. Thanks for watching, everybody.